The champagne flutes clinked around me like wind chimes in a hurricane, each delicate sound another nail in the coffin of the life I thought I had. I stood in the corner of my parents' sprawling backyard, watching my younger brother Marcus cut into a 3-tier cake while everyone applauded. The banner above him read, "Congratulations, Marcus, Stanford Medical School." I should have been happy for him. I wanted to be. But the knife twisting in my gut made it impossible. 3 months ago, I'd been accepted to Stanford's prestigious medical program. It had been my dream since I was 12 years old, since the day I watched surgeons save my grandmother's life after her stroke. I'd spent 6 years working 2 jobs to save money, volunteering at 3 different hospitals, maintaining a 4.0 GPA, while my parents told me I was wasting my time. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. "Medicine isn't for people like us, Ryan," my father had said. "Be realistic." But I'd done it anyway. I'd gotten in on my own merit, my own sacrifice. Then Marcus, golden child Marcus, who'd barely scraped through pre-med with a 3.2, decided he wanted to be a doctor too. And suddenly my parents cared very much about medicine being for people like us. I watched my mother dab tears from her eyes as she hugged Marcus. My father's hand rested proudly on his shoulder. Neither of them had touched me in months. "Ryan!" My Aunt Linda appeared at my elbow, smelling of expensive perfume and wine. "Isn't this wonderful? Both my nephews, doctors. Your parents must be so proud." The words stuck in my throat. "Yeah, wonderful." "You must be excited to go to Stanford together." I forced a smile. "Actually, I'm not going to Stanford." Her face fell. "What? But I thought, your mother said you got in too. What happened?" What happened? What happened was that 3 days after Marcus got his acceptance letter, my father had called me into his study. I remembered every detail of that conversation with crystalline clarity. "Son, we need to talk about your situation." "My situation?" "This Stanford business. Your mother and I have discussed it, and we think it's best if you declined their offer." I'd laughed. Actually laughed because surely he was joking. "Dad, this is my dream. I've worked for this my entire life. And Marcus has worked for it too. But the reality is, we can't afford to send both of you. The tuition alone is astronomical, and with living expenses..." "I have scholarships. I have my savings. I've been planning." "Your scholarships cover 60%, Ryan. The rest is still over $100,000 for 4 years. Your savings won't last a semester." "Then I'll take loans. I'll work." "Marcus needs our support," my mother had cut in, appearing in the doorway. "He's younger. He needs more guidance. You're stronger, Ryan. You've always been more independent." Independent. That was their word for neglected. "We've already committed to supporting Marcus through medical school," my father continued. "We've told him he can focus entirely on his studies. No working, no distractions. We're going to give him the best possible chance at success." "And what about my best chance?" My father's expression had hardened. "You'll figure it out. You always do." That's when I'd understood. They weren't asking me to decline Stanford. They were telling me. And when I'd refused, when I'd said I was going anyway, my mother had said the words that would haunt me forever. "Then you're making a choice, Ryan. If you go to Stanford after we've asked you not to, if you put your own ambitions above your family's needs, then in our eyes, you're already dead." My father had nodded in agreement. "We'll have one son who respects his family. You'll be nothing to us." I'd gone to my room and cried for the first time since I was 10 years old. 2 days later, I'd received an email from Stanford's financial aid office. My application for additional aid had been withdrawn. When I called them, panicked, they told me the request had come from my father, who was listed as a reference on my financial aid forms. He'd told them our family's financial situation had changed and that I'd be declining my acceptance. He'd sabotaged me. And then, like pouring gasoline on a fire, they'd thrown this party. This celebration for Marcus, using the money they could have given me, inviting everyone we knew to celebrate the son they'd chosen over the one they'd discarded. Ryan, Aunt Linda was still waiting for an answer. What happened with Stanford? I decided it wasn't the right fit, I heard myself say. The lie tasted like ashes. She patted my arm sympathetically and drifted away, and I was alone again with my thoughts and my rage. That's when I saw it. My father's study window was open on the second floor, curtains billowing in the evening breeze. He always left it open during parties, said the stuffiness drove him mad, and I knew with absolute certainty that his computer would be on. It always was. He was paranoid about the startup time, so he never shut it down. An idea began to form. Dark, terrible, necessary. I slipped away from the party, through the side door, up the servants' stairs that nobody used anymore. My father's study was exactly as I remembered. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, walls lined with books he'd never read. And there, glowing softly in the dimming light, was his computer. I sat down in his chair. My hands were shaking. I knew his password. He'd used the same one for 15 years. Marcus 2010. The year my brother was born, Never Ryan 2004. That would have been too much to ask. The desktop loaded, and I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. What was I doing? This was crazy. This was wrong. But so was what they'd done to me. I opened his email first, started reading. What I found in the first 10 minutes made my stomach turn. Emails to Stanford, exactly as I'd suspected, but worse. He hadn't just withdrawn my financial aid application. He'd sent emails to the admissions office claiming I'd been involved in academic dishonesty at my undergraduate institution. Lies, complete fabrications, and he'd sent them from a burner email account, anonymously, knowing Stanford would have to investigate. That's why they'd never actually rescinded my acceptance. The investigation was probably still ongoing, which meant, my God, which meant I could still fix this. I kept digging, found more emails. To my undergraduate professors, asking them to reconsider their recommendation letters for me, offering donations to the biology department if they'd be willing to provide additional context about my character. Some had ignored him, but Professor Williams, who'd always hated me, had apparently been happy to comply. Then I found the financial records, my father's business accounts, his personal accounts. And there, in black and white, I saw exactly how much money my parents had, how much they'd been hiding from me. They weren't struggling, they weren't choosing between their two sons' educations. They had nearly $2 million in liquid assets alone. They could have easily afforded both of us at Stanford. Hell, they could have afforded to send 5 kids to Stanford. They'd lied to me. They'd chosen Marcus not because they couldn't afford both, but because they wanted to, because he was their favorite, because he always had been. The rage that swept through me was incandescent. My vision actually blurred at the edges. I heard footsteps on the stairs, heavy. My father. I minimized the windows and stood up, moving to the bookshelf as if I'd been browsing. When he appeared in the doorway, his face already darkening with suspicion, I met his eyes calmly. "What are you doing in here?" "Looking for a book. The party's a bit much." "Get out." "Sure, Dad." I moved past him, and as I did, I smiled. "Great party, by the way. Marcus must feel really special." Something in my tone made him pause, but I was already down the hall, down the stairs, back out into the garden where the party continued like nothing had happened. But everything had happened. And now I had a plan. The next morning, I drove to Stanford. It took 6 hours, but I barely noticed the miles passing. I walked into the admissions office at 9 a.m. sharp, asked to speak with Dean Roberts, and refused to leave until she saw me. When she finally agreed to meet, I laid it all out, showed her the emails I'd photographed on my phone, explained that the allegations of academic dishonesty had come from my own father, who was trying to sabotage my admission so my brother could go instead, showed her the financial records proving they could afford both of us. Dean Roberts's expression grew colder and colder as I spoke. "Mr. Chen," she said finally, "this is extremely serious. If what you're telling me is true, this is fraud. It's defamation. We'll need to investigate immediately." "I understand. I just want a fair chance." She nodded slowly. "I'll need to keep copies of everything you've shown me. And Mr. Chen, I'm sorry this happened to you." I left Stanford feeling lighter than I had in months, but I wasn't done. Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize, someone methodical, someone cold. I copied all of my father's financial records, including the ones that showed he'd been dodging taxes for years, sent them anonymously to the IRS with a detailed explanation. I contacted every single person who'd attended Marcus's party and told them the truth. Sent them screenshots of my parents' emails, their financial records, their lies. Let them see exactly what kind of people threw a lavish party while crushing their own child's dreams. I posted the entire story on social media, not vindictively, factually, with receipts, with proof. I tagged my parents, tagged Marcus, tagged everyone. The post went viral in our community within hours. Then I waited. The first call came from Aunt Linda. She was crying. "Ryan, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. We all are." Then Uncle Tom, then Cousin Jessica, then my father's business partners, then my mother's book club friends. The phone rang and rang and rang. My parents' calls I ignored. Marcus called me 3 days later. "Ryan, what the hell did you do?" I told the truth. "You've destroyed them. Mom won't stop crying. Dad's locked himself in his study. People are calling them monsters." "Are they wrong?" Silence. Then, "I didn't know they sabotaged your acceptance. I swear, Ryan, I didn't know." "Would it have mattered if you did?" More silence. Then the call ended. The IRS audit started 2 weeks later. My father hired lawyers, expensive ones, but the evidence was clear. He'd been hiding income, inflating deductions, using his business accounts for personal expenses. The penalties would be substantial. Stanford called me a month after my meeting with Dean Roberts. "Mr. Chen, we've completed our investigation. The allegations against you were completely fabricated, and we've identified the source. We'd like to officially reinstate your full acceptance, effective immediately. We're also offering you an additional merit scholarship to cover the costs that your father's interference caused you to miss out on." I actually had to sit down. "Are you serious?" "Very serious. And Mr. Chen, we've also rescinded your brother's acceptance. Stanford has a zero-tolerance policy for fraud and manipulation in the admissions process. While he didn't perpetrate it directly, his acceptance was obtained through dishonest means by his family. We can't allow that to stand." I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. "What about other schools? Will you tell them?" "That's not our policy. But the investigation is on record if any institution inquires. Marcus would have to start over, reapply next year, maybe get in somewhere else, or maybe not." I thanked Dean Roberts and hung up. The night before I left for Stanford, my parents appeared at my apartment. I'd moved out 2 weeks after the party, couldn't stand being in their house anymore. They stood on my doorstep looking 10 years older. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed. My father's shoulders sagged in a way I'd never seen. "Can we come in?" my mother asked. I stood aside. We sat in my tiny living room, the silence heavy and suffocating. "The IRS is taking everything," my father said finally. "The penalties, the back taxes, the legal fees. We'll have to sell the house. My business will probably go under." I said nothing. "Marcus isn't speaking to us," my mother continued. "He blames us for ruining his chance at Stanford. At any good medical school, really. The scandal follows him everywhere now." Still, I said nothing. "We're losing everything, Ryan," my father's voice cracked. "Our reputation, our friends, our home. All of it." "In our eyes, you're already dead," I quoted softly. "That's what you told me. Remember?" My mother flinched like I'd struck her. "We were wrong," she whispered. "God, Ryan, we were so wrong. I don't know what we were thinking. I don't know how we became these people." "You were always these people," I said. "You just got caught." "We want to make it right," my father said. "However we can, whatever it takes." I looked at them, really looked at them, and saw them clearly for the first time in my life. Not as the parents I'd wanted them to be, the ones I desperately sought approval from, but as they actually were, flawed, selfish, capable of cruelty in the name of favoritism. "There's nothing to make right," I said. "You made your choice. You told me I was dead to you. So that's what I am. I'm gone. And you don't get to resurrect me because the consequences caught up with you. Ryan, please. I'm going to Stanford. I'm going to become a doctor. I'm going to have the life I worked for, that I earned, that you tried to take from me. And you're not going to be part of it." "We're your parents," my mother sobbed. "No," I said quietly. "Parents don't do what you did. Parents don't choose one child over another. Parents don't sabotage and lie and manipulate. You're just people who raised me, and not very well, apparently." They left. I watched them walk to their car, not the Mercedes anymore, they'd sold that to pay lawyers, and drive away. I didn't cry. I'd done all my crying months ago. I'm in my second year at Stanford now. The medical program is everything I dreamed it would be. Brutal, exhausting, exhilarating, perfect. Marcus ended up at a state school. Not a bad one, but not Stanford. We don't talk. Maybe someday we will, maybe not. My parents sent me a Christmas card last year. I didn't open it. Aunt Linda checks in on me sometimes. So does Uncle Tom. They tell me my parents ask about me, want to know how I'm doing, want to know if there's any chance for reconciliation. I tell them maybe someday, but I don't mean it. The truth is, when they told me I was already dead to them, they didn't realize they were performing their own funeral. Because in making that choice, in prioritizing Marcus so completely that they'd destroy me to elevate him, they killed something that can't be resurrected. Not trust, not love, but the belief that family is supposed to be unconditional. I learned that family can be very, very conditional. And when you fail their conditions, when you dare to want something for yourself, they'll bury you alive and throw a party on your grave. So I made them wish I was actually dead, not through violence, not through some dramatic confrontation, but through something much simpler and much more devastating. I lived. I succeeded. I became everything they said I couldn't be, everything they tried to prevent me from becoming. And I did it without them. I proved that not only did I not need them, but that I was better off without them. That's the revenge they can never escape. Every time they hear about my accomplishments through the family grapevine, every time someone congratulates them on having a son at Stanford, only to be met with awkward silence. Every time they realize what they lost, they have to sit with the knowledge that they did this. They chose this. They killed their relationship with their son, and for what? To give Marcus an advantage he ultimately lost anyway? To prove some twisted hierarchy of love that nobody asked for? I'm not dead, but the family I thought I had is. And I'm the one who gets to walk away from the funeral while they sit with the corpse of their own making, wondering how it all went so wrong. Sometimes I wake up in my small apartment near campus, look at the Stanford medical textbooks stacked on my desk, and think about that night at the party. The champagne, the banner, the cake. My mother's tears for Marcus and her indifference to me. And then I smile, because I won. Not by destroying them, though that happened, but by refusing to let them destroy me. They told me I was already dead, so I became immortal.